Hello, and welcome to the Feeling Good podcast, where you can learn powerful techniques to change the way you feel. I am your host, Rhonda Borowski, and joining me here in the Murrieta studio is Dr. David Burns. Dr. David Burns is a pioneer in the development of cognitive behavioral therapy and the creator of the new team therapy. He is the author of Feeling Good, which has sold over 5 million copies in the United States and has been translated into over 30 languages. David is currently an emeritus adjunct professor of clinical psychiatry at Stanford University School of Medicine.
Hello, Rhonda.
Hello, David. And we have a special guest to say hello to today, Jill Levitt, our own queen of Team CBT. Sorry.
Hello, Queen Jill.
Well, thank you. That's quite an introduction. I've never received that quite before.
And welcome to our listeners to episode 146. Today we're going to have a really interesting topic. I say that every week. We're talking about when helping doesn't help, and empathy errors that we make when we're caring for our loved ones, not necessarily our patients, but our children and our parents and other people, our friends. And so I thought maybe, unless you have another idea, David, Jill, you could talk about what this means to you. And
Sure. Yeah. I had volunteered to come back and talk to David and you, Rhonda, too, about this topic because it's kind of near and dear to my heart. Although I really try to practice what I preach and really focus a lot on using empathy skills with my patients and also with my loved ones. I had shared with David and you, Rhonda, that this year I've made a good deal of empathy errors with both my 14-year-old son and also with my mom, who it just so happens both have been struggling with some injuries this year, and so have needed a lot of TLC, and I've just found myself being less empathic than I would like and making plenty of empathy errors. So I figured I would share my flaws openly with you guys and see if others could benefit from the wisdom I've gained actually from making a lot of mistakes and then repairing them.
yeah, I think I make most of my learning points through the mistakes I've made.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Well, it's always kind of a relief when I see that you, Jill, are making the occasional mistake, because I make so many mistakes, and you're so beautiful in your interpersonal skills. You're kind of a model to learn from. In fact, I was telling Rhonda that at the Burlingame, I did a TV show yesterday.
Wow.
With Fujan Zane, who it's the third time I've done it with her. Oops, I'm sorry for the clack there. I just dropped my clipboard. She's in LA, and we just do it through Skype.
Mm-hmm.
But she's really nice to do interviews with, and she was just proclaiming in ecstasy about our live demo. And she got a little overexcited and said, "Yeah, there were 5,000 to 7,000 people in the audience." And she said they were all in a state of ecstasy.
Wow.
But the thing that she said, "David, your style has changed so dramatically even in the last 2 years, because you were just so warm and tender. It was almost unbelievable." And I said, "Well, I have two people to thank for that, Jill and my late cat, Obi."
Oh, thanks.
Wow,
I'm happy to be put on a pedestal with Obi.
I know, that's
pretty
something
amazing.
about you.
Thank you.
But it's just great when you see other people falling short, because if you're aware of your own falling short, which I am painfully aware so often, it's great to see that others are human as well. But tell us about it, because I know your son had a very painful bone spur that had to be removed from his foot, and he's young and he's athletic, and he's just in those years when it's so important to be physically right up there, and removal of a bone spur is really cutting through bone.
Yeah, he actually had, it wasn't quite a bone spur, but he did have to have a tendon detached and a piece of bone, removed, and then his tendon reattached.
Oh,
But so
gosh.
basically, he
Horrible.
was immobilized in a boot and crutches for like about 10 weeks
Oh my
with no
goodness.
change. So then he had to have surgery, and then you have to be non-weight bearing after surgery for another 8 weeks. So it was like, what is that, 4.5 months
Right.
without bearing any weight on his foot. So
Wow.
basically, as an active, athletic 14-year-old, it was pretty devastating. And and basically, I mean, I think overall we maintained a really good connection throughout, and I tried to be really supportive of him. However, there were moments in time where he was really, really down about the injury and felt really socially isolated and felt really pessimistic. And I remember the one time I felt the most frustrated with him and frustrated with myself too was after we had been through the surgery and he was finally getting his cast off. However, when they removed the cast, he hadn't moved his foot in so long and he couldn't even bend his toes.
Oh, yeah,
Oh,
right.
wow.
And
Yeah.
so here he is. We're supposed to be excited, like this is a milestone. I say
Yeah.
supposed to be, like I'm expecting him to be excited that we got the cast off.
Yay.
Instead, he was pretty horrified that he couldn't even
He was
wiggle his
paralyzed.
toes. Exactly.
Sounds so
Was it
scary.
painful paralysis or just
It was not
paralysis?
painful, but he was unable to move his foot or his toes. And the doctor, of course, was reassuring and said, it's a combination of kind of atrophy of muscle and also just your brain not connecting with your toes and
Yeah.
nerves, etc. It'll come back. But basically, it was like the morning after getting his cast off, and he just was so hopeless. And he was saying, I feel so weak and I don't want to go to school and I'm never going to get better. And it was just all of those like pessimistic, hopeless thoughts. And on top of that being hard to sit with as a mom, I'm also, trying to get like breakfast on the table, everybody out the door, I got to get to work. And so I was especially impatient. And so while I could counsel someone else on all of the right things to say in that moment, I basically said, you're going to be fine. Put your boot on, get downstairs. We got to get to school.
Yeah. Right. Well, what's wrong with that?
Exactly. Exactly. I mean, wasn't that just that great mom material?
Well,
So, but I want to share one other thing, which is that, it was that moment that basically then I went to work, and throughout the rest of the day, I just felt terrible because I felt, on the one hand, I felt really sad that I wasn't able to be supportive and really be there for him. But I was also really painfully aware of just like how hard it was for me in that moment to sit with his feelings of hopelessness. Like I knew that I needed to empathize, but I also felt like it was so sad to see your son saying, I'm never going to get better and my life sucks. And
was there any annoyance as well? Frustration?
well, in the moment, I felt really frustrated, for sure. And that's why I said, just put your boot on. You're going to be fine. You're one day post, you just got your cast off. You're going to be fine. All the cheerleading, right? And kind of demanding. But after the fact, when I thought about it, I felt really sad. And I kind of feel like that's part of, I turned to frustration rather than just kind of sitting with him and feeling sad with him in that moment.
Now, our listeners may not know quite what we're talking about because they might be thinking, well, what was wrong with what Jill did? And that's the whole purpose of this podcast, because when people are upset, we have a natural tendency to try to cheer them up,
right,
and to encourage them. And why is it that might not always be the best strategy?
Yeah, because
especially when you're, it's so difficult to see your son whom you love so much suffering. Why isn't it a good thing to try to cheer up someone you love who's suffering?
Yeah, and I probably left out. Yeah, I'm sure I said something along the lines of, you're going to be fine, you're strong, you're going to get better, you just need to do your exercises, now put on your boot and let's go. And so why is that an error? Because when someone is feeling sad and down, maybe somewhere along the line, some, problem solving might be effective, but in the moment when they're expressing feelings of hopelessness or despair, what they really need is for you to just empathize and connect with them and basically have them feel heard and seen and understood.
Well, I have two questions for you then. Number one is, what would be a more effective response, and we can mention what the 5 secrets are. I can
Yeah.
post it with the show notes too. And
Mhm.
by the way, if you're listening, like on uTunes, you don't get the show notes,
Mhm.
and so you might want to go to my website, feelinggood.com, and go to the sign up there for the Feeling Good podcast. In the right hand edge of every web page, there's a sign up widget, and then you'll get the show notes, which we put quite a bit of time and effort into. But let's talk about the 5 secrets of effective communication and what would have been maybe a more effective response. And then topic number 2 is, why is it that we drift in and out of enlightenment?
Mhm.
Uh, because I think that's an equally
Mhm.
huge topic, and
Yeah.
not just when someone's hurting, but just in life in general, the things that we're trying to teach people to get out of depression or to develop loving relationships are things that when you're enlightened, you can suddenly see it, and the world opens up and becomes a very loving and joyous place. But it's so easy to drift into irritability and frustration
Mhm.
and just kind of want to tell somebody off sometimes, and having
Yeah.
to follow these.
Suck it up, deal with it, get
Yeah,
on with the
right,
show, right?
right.
Yeah.
Right. And we just did a podcast. It won't be published for a few weeks of this fellow that had all these bizarre criticisms of David.
That'll be actually published after
And I
this
had to
one.
act real nice.
Yeah.
I just wanted to say, oh, why don't you go screw yourself? This is so stupid. But we're human.
Yep.
And we kind of the dark forces
Right.
take over sometimes. So tell us about the 5 secrets and what would have been a more effective response, Jill. And also, did you talk to him later? I'll bet.
Yeah, I did talk to him later. So we'll maybe we'll talk about the 5 secrets first, and then I'll tell you what.
No, tell us what happened.
What I said later.
Yeah,
oh, okay. So well, basically, I thought about it during the day in between patients, and felt sad about it. And so that night, I said to him, Alex, I feel really badly about what happened this morning. You were feeling really down and kind of overwhelmed and worried about your foot, and I just kind of tried to cheer you up and get you downstairs so you could get out to school. And I wish that I had just kind of been there for you and been there to listen. You've been through so much, and it is so hard. You're a 14-year-old boy who wants desperately to be biking and running and playing basketball, and this is awful for you. And I'm sorry that I wasn't there for you this morning.
It's so neat.
And then the funny part, though, this is the thing with kids especially, is that he's like, what do you mean?
Right.
And then I sort of said it, again, a little bit. And he's like, it's okay. He's like,
whatever.
I needed to go to school, which is sweet. But I still feel with those parenting moments, even when your kid says, what do you mean? I don't remember it. I still feel like there's so much in those moments of acknowledging that we made mistakes as parents, because I still think, you know what I'm saying?
Sure.
I think even if he says, oh, don't worry about it, it was fine, hearing me acknowledge that I screwed up, that I wasn't there for him, that I want to be there for him, even just the fact that I make mistakes and can totally acknowledge them. I felt so much better.
Oh yeah, it's such a beautiful thing but then we drift out of enlightenment sometimes. We don't want to do that.
Right.
What would be a good response? Mom, I don't think I'm ever going to get better. I can't even move my toes. I don't want to go to school.
Well, wait, can I add to that question? Because that's a really great question. I'd love to hear your response, but it's not just a random time of the day. It's at a really busy time of the day where you have to get your other son to school. You have to get breakfast on the table. You need to get to work. There are all these time pressures. And your son says, but Mom.
Right. And now to say it again, what you said, David, go ahead. It's helpful to have the lead into it. So.
Sure. Yeah, Mom, I don't think I'm ever going to get better. I can't move my toes. I don't want to go to school. I'm never going to be able to do sports again.
So hard. Alex, you're right. This is so hard. You have been through so much, and it must feel really scary to not be able to even wiggle your toes. I'm feeling really sad for you. I know this is such a hard thing you're having to go through. I really love you, and sometimes it's even really hard for me to sit with you when you're having a hard time because I love you so much.
I thought that was great. As an Alex, I wouldn't have minded actually at the end a little bit of disconfirmation of what I'm saying. A little
So
bit of
maybe like I know that you're feeling really hopeless, but I feel really hopeful. I think I think little by little, I don't know, are you giving me permission to cheerlead a little bit?
sure. Just say I
Yeah.
feel totally hopeful. I
Yeah,
think the
exactly.
doctor's right. He says it's normal, and I think you're going to get back to being kick-ass again.
Yeah.
But all that being said, I know that you're in the dark right now, and I just love you so much.
Right. Yeah. So you're giving me permission to do a little cheerleading.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's an
Well, it's
exception to every
interesting.
rule.
I think that's true, actually, and maybe it's even the idea that with it, wedged in, like the empathy sandwich, a little optimism is okay.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Now, what are these techniques for our listeners for whom this is more of a blur?
Yeah.
We're hearing it as crisp techniques. What are the techniques, Jill and Rhonda?
You want me? I'm happy to talk.
Yeah, you talk. You're the queen.
I'll start. Yeah. So, I mean, the first thing I said was what we call disarming, which is you're right. This, I would probably say with my 14-year-old, right, this really sucks. This is really hard. So you're right. Disarming, agreeing with what the other person is saying.
And the key to disarming, which is a high art form, because when people tried to do it in the seminar yesterday, they were just atrocious. I don't want to say, I don't want to give a bad name to anyone, but this woman was giving a complaint of a typical person they're mentoring, and we were trying to teach them how to do improved mentoring, and we're trying to teach the disarming technique. And so the woman said, "Well, it just seems like she's a woman." She says, "It seems like every time I come up with an idea, that the men just take over, and I just feel like I'm never listened to." And then this fellow jumped in and said, "Yes, men are pigs." And he said, kind of sarcastically too, like your techniques suck, type of thing. So it's hard for people to grasp what this disarming is. But since what he's saying literally, I'm never getting better. When you use the disarming technique, you agree with what's true
right.
and what the person is
right. I would never say you're right, you're never going to get better. That would be an awful thing to say, but you're right. This is so hard. Progress is so slow. Or in this moment, you feel so stuck.
Yeah. Right? And you're right. You can't move your toes, and it must be terrifying and frustrating and rage producing. And you're young and vital and handsome and awesome. And one of these days you're going to be playing soccer again and kicking goals. But right now you're in the dark, and my heart goes out to you. And I just love you so much. I'm just so proud of you, and just so sad that you're feeling the way you're feeling now. How was that?
That was awesome. That went way beyond disarming. Now can we tell her?
So let's do that.
Yeah, so you did some disarming, which was you're right, and this is really hard. And you did some feeling empathy, which is when you're acknowledging how he might be feeling, which I think you even said, and I think I did too, like terrified or scared, not being able to move your toes, and frustrated and angry and rageful, you said even.
Yeah.
So you did disarming and feeling empathy. You did really nice I feel, which I think I did too. Like I just love you so much.
Yeah,
and it's so hard.
I was quoting you.
For you. No, I thought yours sounded really good.
I was channeling you.
So you did some beautiful, so I feel, and then stroking, and was there anything?
Well, there wasn't a thought empathy.
Yeah.
And it's so interesting that when I'm teaching patients or students, thought empathy, it seems so easy that you just repeat back what the other person said, but it's actually really hard.
Yeah.
Because we either forget about it, or we want to add to it, or we want to interpret it.
Yeah, right.
It's true. Yeah.
And we make this look easy, but it's not, for just the reason that you slipped up, which is so music to my ears, and that it's really hard, because when people are kind of whining and complaining, we can get irritated with them so easily. Now your mom and your son are not whiners or complainers, there is no such thing, but there are people who do a lot of whining and complaining. Is there ever a use of these techniques when someone, whines and complains, and you're going to do disarming and stroking, and your goal is more to get them to stop doing that than to have some deep goal of developing
connection?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I would say in that situation, it's also the perfect response, right?
Yeah.
Because if someone complains like, oh my God, I have so much to do today, and you were to say, oh, don't worry, you'll get it all done. They just want to complain more. They want to convince you that they won't get it all done,
exactly.
that they have so much to do. So even in that situation, if your goal is not connection, as it is for me with family, your goal is to get that person to stop complaining, still disarm, what they're looking for is you saying, oh my goodness, what a lot you have to do today. It just sounds like you're totally swamped.
Yeah.
Because then like, what more are they supposed to say? Yeah, I really am swamped. You know, I mean, when you when you can really disarm and really empathize too, wow, you must be feeling overwhelmed.
Yeah. But Jill, you're also doing it so sincerely. Like you don't sound phony or like you don't sound like you're saying something just to get somebody to stop talking or stop whining. You sound like you really are empathizing with them. Wow, there's so much to do.
Yeah, but I can remember once intentionally using it in a kind of a manipulative way.
Yeah,
once?
Only once?
But it was using disarming and stroking. But I don't know if I've mentioned this on a podcast, but my son had this friend whose father was super wealthy, and he would come over. Did I tell you the story and say things like, "Oh, I noticed you have a new, beautiful new black piano. It's great. Like we have one in our house too, and for some reason ours is twice the size of yours." And it was so irritating, and I had to bring them to a movie, and he's just bragging. So we went out to the King of Prussia Mall outside of Philadelphia, and we were heading to the theater, and we went past a bookstore, Barnes and Noble or something, and so I thought, oh yeah, I'll impress him, So why don't we just look in here? Probably we can see my book on display. And then the little boy says, "Oh yes, my father just bought this bookstore chain." I was so ticked off. And I just went to bed like that. And I just frustrated, feeling humiliated and inadequate. And then I remembered stroking and disarming. And so I taught Eric how to do it too. So the next time he got together and he would brag about something, he'd say, "Oh yeah, like I've heard your piano. It's probably the biggest one in Pennsylvania."
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
And stuff like that.
Yeah.
And it worked like a charm.
Absolutely.
And he was just eating out of our hand. It seemed kind of evil at the time, but it was very joyfully evil, you might say.
Right.
But
right. Well, you're giving them what they want, though.
Yeah. Right.
I had a similar experience actually, literally just this morning at the gym, where older woman, I just turned 45. This woman, who it turns out she told me is 75, was asking me how I felt about my fitness goals. And I didn't really feel like talking, so I just kind of said, "Oh, they're okay." And she started going on and on to me about all this fitness advice and diet advice. Unsolicited.
I'm really happy to hear that.
Interested. So first I was kind of like ignoring her. And then she kept going. So I just turned to her and said, "You look incredible," which is true. I mean, she's a super fit 75-year-old, And she's like, "You wouldn't believe it, I'm 75. And I was like, "You are doing amazingly well. Like you look, if everyone looked as good as you looked," and it's true. I mean, she looked great.
You're joshing me. You're not 75.
I just decided
Come on,
to take
stop
a
pulling
moment.
my leg, lady.
Exactly. I just decided to take a moment and pay attention to her, right? Like give her what she wanted.
That's right.
And she was like, big smile, and then kind of walked away. That was it. And then I was like, oh, that felt great to me too, because I felt like I made her day. It wasn't insincere. It was just, I didn't feel like doing it initially. And then all of a sudden it occurred to me, like, she just wants attention, give her some positive attention.
This is a superficial topic, but it's really a deep topic as well.
I was going to say, I can give you guys, I don't know if we want to do more examples. I can give you the example of my other
Sure.
failure.
Yes,
Sure.
let's do
Yeah,
that.
should
We're
I?
talking about family.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So, because we just started veering into the sort of superficial use of the 5 secrets, which
Yeah.
is true and useful, but I figured you heard not only one terrible epic failure of mine this year, but then after recovering with my son and using lots of empathy, my mother, it turns out very strangely, but also is going to need foot surgery. It's very odd, and is having real problems with her foot, and she's 75. She's not the one who was giving me fitness advice, but she's 75 and she is really fit and loves to walk with friends, and it's like something she does almost every day. And so she called me on the phone the other day and we were talking, and she said, I haven't been able to walk because my foot is hurting so badly and I'm probably going to need to have foot surgery. And I think in the moment I felt kind of equally like with Alex, just kind of overwhelmed, like with that feeling of kind of sadness and hopelessness. And I'm never going to be able to walk again. And I want to walk with my friends. And it's, just kind of sucks so much,
Yeah.
And I said, yeah, I know, but maybe you can start going to the gym and you can start using the stationary bike or the elliptical. You could start lifting upper weights. There's all sorts of other ways you could get fit.
Which is really helpful.
And again, the listeners might be like, well, that sounds really sweet, but it totally flopped. She was like, I don't want to go to the gym. I don't want to. I think I said you could even swim. She's like, I don't want to swim.
Right.
I want to walk outside with my friends.
Right.
Yeah.
So that conversation didn't go so well. And we kind of ended our conversation abruptly. And then she ended up calling me back later and saying, hey, which I feel really grateful. I have this really loving and open relationship with my mom where she can call me back and say, I really didn't feel like you were very supportive today. I just don't feel like you were listening. And she said exactly what we say all the time. She said, when I'm feeling really upset about what's going on with my body, I don't really want you to tell me that it's going to be okay, actually. I want you to listen. This is a really hard thing for me. I want you to say, gosh, that sounds really hard, So she basically, coached me in what we're always coaching people in. And I felt, badly, but I also totally saw it and was able to agree with her and apologize.
So the teaching point is that for our listeners, because they'll want to take away message here, and that's that we all run into people who are upset, as well as people who are complaining, and that there's an almost irresistible human urge to help them, to try to fix them, and to cheer them up and to give them advice, and that almost always fails. Because what people are looking for is a little TLC. And what that means specifically and concretely is to use the disarming technique. This is in no particular order. Feeling empathy, I feel statements, stroking, that type of thing. Now, what does that mean? To use the disarming technique. If your mother is saying, "Gosh, I feel sad. I'm going to need surgery. I can't walk. Blah 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 blah." What does the disarming technique mean?
Yeah, in that context, it's saying, "Gosh, Mom, you're right. I mean, sounds like you're really going to have to be off your feet for a while, and walking means so much to you. This is such a hard thing you're having to go through."
That's a beautiful disarming technique. So that means to agree with the person, to find truth in what the person is saying, even if what they're saying seems exaggerated or over the top or self-pitying or whatever it is that you find offensive about it, that there is truth there. Now, what does feeling empathy mean?
It means acknowledging how she is likely feeling in this moment. Which I would say, and I'm guessing that you're feeling really disappointed and frustrated and annoyed and probably kind of worried and scared too.
And that's beautiful. And so just acknowledging how the person is likely feeling. And then we have I feel statements and stroking. How does that work?
So with her, I would say I feel really sad to think about what you're going through because I really, really love you and care about you, and it's even hard for me to hear this news.
And that's so beautiful. Now you hear those things; they sound kind of simple, but it takes a lot of practice to learn
Hmm.
to do that beautifully the way you just did. But it also takes the decision
Hmm.
to do that. And when we drift out of enlightenment, we don't want to do that.
Hmm.
We were annoyed with the person. I
Hmm.
say, like, straighten up, stop whining so much. And so what do we say to the person who says, well, I don't want to do those things?
What would be the bad response?
No, what
No,
would
what
we
would we
say?
say when we don't want to do? We could say, like in your situation, you could say, I've just dealt with this with Alex, and I really don't have time to deal with you, Mom. Sorry. That would be so mean.
You're saying that that would be the bad.
That would
I
be the
didn't
bad?
understand what you
Well,
were
Is that the
asking.
let's say
bad?
there's a
Sorry.
listener to the podcast
Uh-huh.
who's irritated with someone who complains a lot
Right.
and is telling himself or herself, well, I don't want to have to do these things. I don't want to
Uh-huh.
have to use disarming.
Oh, well, you don't have to. You just can maintain the status quo and see how that's
Exactly.
working for you.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah. So
Yeah.
there's a deep
You
decision
definitely don't have to,
that
right?
has to be made to go in a different direction. And then when we're drifted out of enlightenment, we don't
Mm-hmm.
want to do that.
Right.
And so why do we drift out of enlightenment? What's going on
I think
when?
it's a lot of kind of other blame, right? I mean, we're
Yeah.
thinking that the other person is wrong because they're complaining or because they're pessimistic or hopeless, or
Sure.
we're thinking their view or their opinion is distorted,
Absolutely. And
right?
that's one of the biggest causes of suffering in the world today. Everyone's blaming everyone else for every conceivable thing, and that leads to
Yeah.
conflict and battle. But what I was driving at, and that's absolutely correct, is that I think, too, we all have a certain amount of resources. And
Oh, yeah.
and sometimes we get kind of depleted, and
Right.
instead of having to always use the five secrets, we say, well, can't I just say screw you
Right.
sometimes?
Right.
And I think that's part of the human condition as well, is that there's a part of us that is drawn to the dark side, particularly when we're concerned maybe we're not receiving the love
Mm.
and
Yeah, and ultimately, because maybe I shared that with you, David, but that, like, when I had this conversation with my mom after the fact, that's kind of what I shared. In addition to first just kind of agreeing and saying I've really
yeah.
screwed up, I basically said, I think part of the reason I've been having a hard time empathizing with you now going through this is that I'm still not even through it with Alex. And this year has been, I've just felt like my empathy reservoir has been really depleted. My work requires a lot of me, my teaching requires a lot of me, and now my son at home. And so I think I just kind of didn't have it in me for you.
I just admire the heck out of both of you because I think you both do so much giving and of yourselves,
Hmm.
and just amazing to me how much you both do for family, for husband, for kids, for colleagues, for your career, for podcasting, teaching free at Stanford, and all of these things, and they're all really fun. At least for
Mm-hmm.
me, they're all
Right.
really
They are
fun. But
fun. Yeah.
Yeah.
but sometimes you end up without much time for yourself and
Right.
to refuel and
Well, even on a smaller level, there are times when I've come home and I'm tired. I've been
Mm-hmm.
giving all day, like you say. You have so many patients, and my husband will say like, "Oh, I have something to tell you about," and I have to stop and say, "I'm really tired. Can you just
Mm-hmm.
give me 15 minutes to like take a bath or
Yeah,
change my clothes, and then I'll listen to you." And then it's just a rejuvenation
absolutely.
well,
of
by way of brief commercial message, because we've been forgetting to put out any commercial
oh
messages. I don't know when this is going to be broadcast, but I think it'll be after our May workshop.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll just say to the listeners, I do have 3 intensives coming up. And go to my website, feelinggood.com. There'll be one in July in Calgary in the middle of July, one at the end of July, the South San Francisco. And Jill, who's here with us
Mm-hmm.
today, and I will be doing a live demo the evening of day 1. And that's going to be a fantastic one. And then also in, I think, November, if you go to my website, I'm going to do an intensive in Atlanta for the first time. Do you have anything coming up, Jill, that you want
Well,
to
I will
promote?
just say that if people want to do some, online training in different versions or attend one of our workshops starting next fall, they can go to feelinggoodinstitute.com/training
Yeah.
to learn about a variety of therapist training opportunities.
Yeah, I went there today actually, and there's all kinds of good stuff at feelinggoodinstitute.com. Anything that you've got coming up?
No, nothing. Just
So-
regular stuff.
So thank you, everybody. Jill, it's always the best when we have a chance to work with you. Thanks so much.
Yeah,
Thank
thank you,
you
Jill,
both.
for sharing your stories with us.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for having me.
This has been another episode of the Feeling Good podcast. For more information, visit Dr. Burns' website at feelinggood.com, where you will find the show notes for this episode under the podcast page. You will also find archives of previous episodes and many resources for therapists and non-therapists. We welcome your comments and questions. If you want to support the show, please share the podcast with people who might benefit from it. You could also go to iTunes and leave a 5-star rating. The theme music is Gypsy Jazz in Paris, 1935, composed and performed by Brett Van Donsel. I am your host, Rhonda Borowski. We hope you enjoyed this episode. I invite you to join us next time for another episode of the Feeling Good podcast.